My husband always said, I don't know what's going on in Israel and Palestine, but I just know every fucking politician I hate supports Israel. Ted Cruz. That's the way. He's a criminal defense lawyer.
That's actually a pretty good way of judging an issue.
Lindsey Graham. He goes, I just know that.
Do you want to be on the same side as Ted Cruz and Lindsey Graham?
So that was his take on it. So
when a mainstream, self-described MSNBC liberal goes on camera and admits that corporate Democrats deprogrammed her into realizing the entire political media ecosystem is rigged, the establishment has a massive problem. Jennifer Welch, host of the viral podcast I've Had It, sat down with Mehdi Hasan and said the exact thing party leaders are terrified of. She didn't just call out corporate media propaganda. She showed what happens when you confront high-profile Democratic senators like Cory Booker over Aipac money, dark money PACs, and refusal to name war crimes on tape. If you believe in real accountability, truth over access, and calling out politicians regardless of party, hit that subscribe button right now. I'm Neil. This is the honest perspective. Corporate Democrats can run from independent media, but they can't hide from their own receipts. Let's get into it.
I have definitely moved further to the left. And I would say, some people like to say radicalized. I would say I've been deprogrammed from corporate news propaganda and corporate Democrats. And I understand that within the Democratic Party, you have corporate Dems and progressive Dems. And I'm a progressive Dem.
I mean, I worked at MSNBC for 3 years, as you know, and I was the most left-wing person at that network. And I always found it amusing when people would say, MSNBC, the left-wing version of Fox. I was like, I wish it was the left-wing view of Fox. It's not at all. Yeah. I had a great time there, but it's not a left-wing network. It's owned by Comcast. No way can it be a left-wing network. Yeah, and when I moved from the US, it's funny because you come from the UK and you're like, the Democratic Party in Europe would be considered a conservative party.
Right.
It doesn't support universal healthcare, which even conservatives in Europe support. Like basic policy positions, Democrats are to the right of many European conservative parties. So it's so skewed, as you say, liberal becomes left and moderate. One of the reasons audiences, as you know, Jennifer, flock to you, one of the reasons you popped up in my social feeds when I first came across you, is your unsparing use of language. You drop a lot of fuck bombs, which I enjoy.
Thank you.
Some of your nicknames for Donald Trump include Cankles McTarto Tits, Whiny Titty Baby. How did you learn to curse like this?
I don't know, because my parents don't particularly cuss. And so I really don't know where it comes from, because I think when I was younger, I remember I had like a diary and I called a friend like a bitch. And of course, my sister, who is a bitch, went and found my diary. And I was like, Jennifer's cussing in her diary. And I remember my mother being like, and I don't know if it was that I wasn't supposed to do it, that I did. And then especially when I get around Pumps, who is Angie, her nickname is Pumps, we both just start feeding off of each other and cussing.
What do your boys make of your cussing?
Oh, they're fine with it. Yeah.
Proud.
Yeah.
It's a good one, Mom.
Yeah, they're proud of me.
Well, I wish we could cuss like that.
I was just talking to my oldest son last night, FaceTiming him. He's in law school. He said, Mom, I'm so proud of you. I saw a clip where you said you regretted your vote for Hillary and wish you would have voted for Bernie. This is evolution, Mom. That's what my son said to me.
Is that your position now?
Yeah, it is.
We would have been a different country right now if Bernie
There's no question.
had been the candidate and maybe won. Over the past year, let's talk about the Democrats and your interviews. Over the past year, you and your co-host, Angie Pumps, have conducted some of the toughest interviews of Democratic politicians that we have seen for a while. And that's both a compliment to you, but also an indictment of our media, that you two from Bravo with the podcast are doing the grilling.
Notice what Welch just highlighted there. The moment everyday voters stop relying on corporate cable news networks owned by defense contractors and media conglomerates, the illusion shatters. Independent media doesn't give politicians a pass just because they have a D next to their name. Watch what happens next when she takes that exact standard straight to Cory Booker.
Was with Senator Cory Booker of New Jersey. Let's have a watch of that.
Okay. What do you have to say about the capitulation that you participated in?
We have a really good way of holding up these purity tests. That if I agree with you on 95%,
that's such bullshit.
I'm one of a handful of people that don't take corporate PAC money. I don't understand my Democratic
What
Party.
about AIPAC money? You take AIPAC money, don't you?
A minuscule percentage of my resources come from
I read it's like 800,000. There's a photo shoot with you with Benjamin Netanyahu. And I was just like, what in the actual fuck? Benjamin Netanyahu, do you think he's a war criminal?
Again, these are questions that a lot of people think are the important litmus tests.
Democrats get so frustrated with where we are right now, where you see like the Zoran Mamdanis and the Graham Plattners rise up, because they can go on podcasts and you can say, do you think Benjamin Netanyahu is a war criminal? And they just say, yes. And that's the end of it.
How did you feel? Hilarious clip. How did you feel Cory Booker handled that interview?
Not very well. It's, you know what the thing is, what's so crazy is when you're not in the Death Star, which is media politics, and you watch it and it's your life and you're a diehard political junkie, you think everybody's so smart and all of these great things about it. And then you get in it and you're like, Jesus Christ. I mean, this is just like any other workplace gossipy environment. And then you have
With the
people.
same bullshit.
Yes. And so Cory Booker, genuinely, I like. He's a likable person. I like when he talks about civil rights. I think he has a really emotional way of connecting with people. And then when you find out, like for me, when we lost to a fucking moron 2 times in a row, or one time and then another time, 20 and then 2024, you start looking at why are we losing? You start looking at corporate donations. And then I started looking into the whole Israel thing. And then when you find out that these people are beholden to the same PAC that gave Trump the same amount of money that Elon Musk did to get him elected, and they don't feel like that's a conflict of interest, it's kind of heartbreaking.
Yeah.
And so I was just kind of like, are you going to call? I mean, I thought I'd start with a really simple question. Like,
It wasn't a gotcha, right? You were just trying to, it felt like plain speaking that we don't see in the media enough.
I thought it would just be a super
normal
simple,
person, yeah.
yes.
But he couldn't bring himself to do it.
He couldn't say it. And that was a real eye-opening thing.
He said, we're running out of time. I got to go vote.
Cory Booker literally checked his watch and claimed he had to go vote the second. The words Aipac and war criminal entered the conversation. That isn't a pivot. That is a complete tactical retreat when faced with real campaign finance receipts. But the shift didn't stop at calling out Booker. Watch how Welch describes her own political awakening on Gaza.
The interesting thing is a lot of people are becoming more progressive, more liberal, but there is this phenomenon, I don't know if you've come across it, it's called PEP, Progressive Accept Palestine. They're amazingly progressive on every issue, but you mention Palestine, whether it's a Cory Booker, whoever it is, Gavin Newsom, they will run away, run for the hills. What I'm wondering is, how did you dodge becoming a PEP? You mentioned earlier, I started reading about it. Like, where does your interest, where does your passion, where does your concern for the Palestinians and this issue come from?
Okay, so when you live in Oklahoma, it's very white, at least where I live. There is a black part of town. It's still very segregated. You don't really know what's going on in the Middle East. And I don't mean for this to sound dismissive, but you don't care either. And this is, multiply this over lots of states in the middle of Oklahoma. There's a tiny, tiny, tiny Jewish community. There's no Muslims at all. Zero Muslim population. So I fell prey to probably some ambient Islamophobia. I watched a lot of Bill Maher in my early 20s, listened to Christopher Hitchens.
He was described as a left-winger, by the way, to go back to our earlier discussion. Bill Maher's the left for the right.
But so after 9/11, I think I absorbed some of that, also having a default setting of not liking religion. So when it was told to me that Israel's a democracy and they're our ally, I was like, okay, yeah, that's great. We need to fight for abortion in Oklahoma. We need to fight for abortion rights. You know, I was fighting more immediate civil rights in these horrible red states. And so when we went to the DNC, which was so cool for us to get invited to the DNC, we went every day. And I was so focused on helping Kamala get elected. I would walk in and there were all these peaceful protesters, Palestine. I would walk out. And I'm a little bit ashamed to admit this to you, but I think atonement and purging is a therapeutic thing. I was irritated by them. I thought they are going to fuck this up for us.
The uncommitted movement.
Yes.
And the Palestinian protests.
And why aren't they doing this at, you know, the RNC and blah, blah. But I just thought everybody's going to pull together and vote for Kamala. There's no way he can win. Well, after she lost, I was like, your mother taught you to be curious. You need to dive into this thing. My husband always said, I don't know what's going on in Israel and Palestine, but I just know every fucking politician I hate supports Israel. Ted Cruz. That's the way. He's a criminal defense lawyer.
That's actually a pretty good way of judging an issue.
Lindsey Graham. He goes, I just know that.
Do you want to be on the same side as Ted Cruz and Lindsey Graham?
So that was his take on it. So I really started researching about it. Like, how did Israel become a country? I didn't fucking know. I didn't care. And I know that's terrible to say, but when you live in a red state, you're so focused on domestic politics.
As critical as I'm of red states, this is not a red state issue. This is an America-wide issue. There are people in blue states who have no clue about what's happening in Palestine. Let's be clear about that.
So I started reading all about it. And then when you see what happens, I have some friends in one girl that I play with, tennis with in Oklahoma City. And she is Palestinian. And I said to her one day after a tennis match, I said, hey, Ines, where are you from? She goes, oh, I'm from Palestine originally. And I just put my hand on her shoulder. And I said, I'm so sorry for what's happening to your country. And she started crying. And she said, you're the only person in this entire state that has acknowledged what's happening to my homeland. She goes, and I never cry. And so I thought, this is pretty fucked up. So I read about it. And it's a genocide. It just is. And you either believe in universal human rights or you don't.
This is post-election. So this is over a year after October 7th. So for the first part of the genocide, you were intent on defend Democrats, stop Trump, protect abortion rights. This isn't the issue. These annoying people at the DNC. Then after Harris loses, that's when you do a deep dive and say.
No, I would say during the election, a lot of our listeners were asking us to look into it. And I saw footage and I knew that this was.
Footage is key. A lot of people.
Yeah.
Because you can't hide it in the old way.
You can't hide it. You can't spin
Mainstream media couldn't spin it.
And I knew.
They live streamed a genocide.
Yeah. And I knew that this was horrible. And then, my husband's he's very critical of the Democrats. He's very critical of the Republicans. He's like, whatever Ted Cruz supports, I'm fucking against. Like, that's his political ethos.
Pretty good rule.
Really good, right?
Pretty good. It cuts out a lot of time and energy.
Yeah.
What side is Ted Cruz on? I'm on the other side.
That's him. That is him. And so
Except for a very brief window in 2016 where he was anti-Trump for 2 months.
Yeah, exactly. But I would say that I started thinking about it, but I was so focused when you live in red states, I was so focused on the abortion ban that we had and women that I know that were pregnant, 20 weeks pregnant, went to get an ultrasound. Baby's organs are outside of the body. Normally you could get an emergency DNC, and now all of a sudden they're driving to New Mexico or Colorado or flying somewhere with this institutionalized shame. They can't get health care. So I was really focused on the climate on the ground in Oklahoma, and federal governments, even corporate Dems, provide harm reduction for vulnerable people in red states. But I'm not stupid. And I knew this is a big fucking problem that the Democratic Party has lost twice to this man.
Do you think that Israel and Gaza, will be an issue in 2028 for the presidential candidate and should be?
Yes, and it should be.
Because you see, Gavin Newsom went on Van Lathan's podcast and Van asked him about AIPAC and he got very flustered. Gavin, who's normally very smooth and slick, I don't know anything about AIPAC. I've never had anything to do with AIPAC.
Interesting.
Nothing to do with me.
I will not vote for a candidate that takes $1 from AIPAC.
It's interesting. It's interesting. I haven't thought about AIPAC. And it's interesting. You're the first to bring up AIPAC in years, which is interesting.
What Jennifer Welch just articulated in that interview is the exact fault line fracturing the modern Democratic Party. And the receipts back up every single word. When Cory Booker claims on tape that AIPAC money represents a minuscule percentage of his resources, he is using a classic Beltway sleight of hand. Direct PAC checks to a candidate's primary campaign account are capped by federal law, meaning the direct checks always look small on paper. But that completely ignores the actual mechanism of dark money in American politics, super PAC bundling and independent expenditure arms like AIPAC's United Democracy Project, UDP. Through the current election cycle, AIPAC and its affiliated super PACs have poured well over $100 million into primary and general elections to target progressive candidates who advocate for conditioning military aid to Israel or enforcing human rights standards. We saw this exact playbook in congressional primaries across the country, where super PSCs dumped tens of millions in dark money ad buys to protect incumbent corporate line holders while completely bypassing substantive policy debate on weapon shipments or civilian casualties. When Cory Booker dodged the question about Benjamin Netanyahu being a war criminal, he wasn't acting out of confusion. He was acting out of political self-preservation. International bodies, including the International Criminal Court, whose prosecutors sought arrest warrants for top Israeli leaders over war crimes and starvation tactics in Gaza, have laid out the legal frameworks. Yet, Senate leadership and figures like Chuck Schumer continue to pledge unconditional military funding while ignoring the fact that over 80% of Democratic voters favor restricting military aid. Welch's point about the PEP phenomenon, progressive except Palestine, is the central contradiction. You cannot claim to champion civil rights, bodily autonomy, and anti-authoritarianism domestically while writing blank checks for military campaigns that flatten hospitals, displace millions, and starve civilians abroad. The corporate Democratic strategy relied for decades on controlling the microphone through legacy cable news outlets that would never ask a senator why they take dark money funding from Republican-aligned donors. But as independent platforms force these conversations into the open, the establishment's ability to hide behind sound bites is collapsing. If you believe that elected officials should answer to their constituents instead of billionaire-funded super PACs, subscribe to The Honest Perspective. I'm Neil. People over profits, truth over access. That's The Honest Perspective, and that's where I'll leave you.